Testing, testing, 1, 2. I have some more crime coverage for you. So, hello and welcome back to my humble show. I'm your host for today and every other day, the Articulate Thinker, hopefully. Here to bring you art articles and articulation straight from Articulation Station, where I'll be assessing the situation, so be sure to like, subscribe, and enjoy the ride. Don't forget to turn on those bell notifications while you're at it. Feel free to disagree with me on anything I say. Let me know in the comments below what you think and what you know, in case you know more than I do. I have some more crime to cover, as I said. This time in Illinois. This time in regards to ICE. An ICE-related incident, too, in fact. Of course, ICE being Immigration Customs Enforcement. In the news a lot as of late. And on CNN, earlier this morning, I saw a clip from an interview. J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, was being interviewed by Jake Tapper on CNN. And he gave his response to an incident which occurred yesterday, I believe. And also he referenced another recent incident from last month. Both incidents, of course, in regards to ICE. You can't take much of anything from J.B. Pritzker at face value, because he's far too one-dimensional, and I would say he's a partisan hack. I try my best not to be that, so I began to dig into the facts, and I put together a thread, so I'm going to share that with you. But I'm going to start with this video, this clip of the aforementioned interview on CNN, Jake Tapper questioning J.B. Pritzker. Here you go. Then we'll get into it.
DHS says that CBP officers shot and wounded a woman in Chicago yesterday after, they say, she allegedly rammed a law enforcement vehicle, and agents were boxed in by multiple cars. The spokesperson for DHS, Tricia McLaughlin, accused Chicago police of leaving the scene and refusing to assist agents in securing the area. What do you know about this incident? Were federal agents boxed in and assaulted?
Well, we don't have a lot of facts. What happens in these sorts of incidents is typically ICE puts out a press release before anybody else can speak with the press, and then it gets reported on social media and elsewhere. Remember, these are the same folks who killed a person, unarmed person, just a couple of weeks ago in Franklin Park. At first, they said that the officer had been threatened with his life. The reality of it and the truth of it has now come out, and that wasn't the case. They killed somebody. So here it's really hard to know exactly what the facts are, and they won't let us access the facts. They are just putting out their propaganda, and then we've got to later determine what actually happened.
All right, for one, if you don't have the facts, then maybe you yourself should stop speculating. So you're asked about the facts of this particular case, this particular incident. And rather than laying them out, since you apparently don't know them, you lay out the supposed facts of an entirely different case, an entirely different incident, in order to lead people to the conclusion that ICE, that DHS, so on and so forth, were in the wrong in, well, both incidents. So I'm going to do my best to break down both incidents, starting with the most recent one. What I've found thus far is that even when Pritzker has the facts, he ignores most of them. He picks out maybe one convenient fact which he feels fits his narrative, and he uses that one particular fact to spin the entire story in order to continue villainizing and vilifying ICE agents, DHS agents, so on and so forth. Everyone within the Trump administration, you name it. So, Devory Darkins had posted that particular clip. He said, Jake Tapper asks J.B. Pritzker about yesterday's incident in Chicago after a woman who was armed with a semi-automatic weapon and blocked in agents with her vehicle was shot by DHS. He responds by calling the whole thing propaganda. Okay, so what exactly is he guilty of then? Oh yeah, propaganda. I said, J.B. Pritzker himself has his own spin every time something like this happens, which is the epitome of propaganda. It's no wonder when people, here illegally or not, feel activated into fleeing the federal authorities or even ramming them. These leftist officials, who are supposed to be representing and defending their law-abiding citizens, continue to take the side of the criminals and illegals. All right, since the less-than-good governor has not provided us with any facts and will not be doing that, at least not in any way other than selectively, let's get into that. Here's a video of Miramar Martinez, aka La Maggie, ramming the DHS vehicle repeatedly and ultimately getting herself shot, non-fatally. So Kim Katie USA account on X here had posted this video. Breaking, this is the video where Miramar Martinez, aka La Maggie, rammed a white DHS vehicle who had their emergency lights on. Another DHS black SUV then attempts to ram Miramar's SUV from behind. One DHS agent is on the passenger side firing shots. Democrats are insane, says Kim, also known as Katie. Here's the clip. So as you can see, the emergency flashers on this truck. This is a DHS vehicle. It's being rammed by this SUV here, this Chevy, by the woman known as La Maggie, repeatedly ramming it, pushing it forward so the truck drives a ways up the road. SUV follows suit. A secondary SUV, which you'll see coming around the corner momentarily, follows the first black SUV, driven by the woman. And you can see the woman in the black SUV is still ramming the white DHS truck. Here comes the second black SUV, which is another DHS vehicle. Rams her. Officers get out. She drives away through some construction cones and some bumps. And somewhere during that time frame, she was apparently shot, non-fatally, once again. I can turn the music down. Crowd gathers around. There's a lot going on which isn't captured in this particular video, but this is what we're working with here. I'll just let this play out. Music is still playing in the background, so I don't know if it's going to cause any copyright issues. I'll just leave it muted. But there you have it. You might wonder, what in the world was this woman doing? Repeatedly ramming the truck from behind? Well, let's keep learning. Here's dispatch audio confirming Chicago police were ordered not to assist federal agents after the attempted vehicular ambush by the armed Miramar Martinez. So yes, she was armed, as I already said. But there's also a bit of controversy because the local police were apparently told not to assist the federal agents. Not good, but hey, leave it to J.B. Pritzker. He doesn't want to assist the federal agents in any way. He wants to continue vilifying them. So from X alerts here, EXX alerts. On X, breaking dispatch audio confirms Chicago police were ordered not to assist federal agents that were cornered earlier today in Chicago. Agents were actively en route when the order was given. Local agents, that is. Dispatcher initially seemed slightly taken back by the order, but promptly relayed the message to all responding units. So now I'll let this play out.
Any kind of particular hairstyle, just younger male Hispanic on foot wearing all black?
No hairstyle.
Okay.
And it wasn't just the woman, in case you were wondering. There was another man who was arrested as well.
And wanted for the hit and run, this guy fled from the scene at 37th Place in Kedzie. It all started at I-55 in Kedzie. Then they fled southbound at Kedzie, where that offending vehicle crashed. They ran the federal agent off the road. They fled on foot westbound 37th Place from Kedzie. It was a male Hispanic younger wearing all black clothing. 99.
Yeah, send the cars in that direction. Have them stay put 2 or 3 blocks away, all right? Have them hold tight until I give you further direction, please.
Okay, 10-4, and for the units responding to 39th Place in Kedzie per 999, if you guys can just, for the units responding to 39th Place in Kedzie, if you guys can start heading there as quick as you can, and then just hold tight for instructions with 999.
999.
999.
For the chief of patrol, clear everybody up. We're not responding over there.
Radio check. And again, per the chief of patrol, we have all the units that, per 999, chief of patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location.
62, we're going to clear out as soon as we can, Spot. We're like locked in over here, so we're going to do the best we can to get out of here as soon as we can.
So at first, additional units were going to be sent there, told to wait in place once they got there, but then even that was retracted, and the local police were told to clear the area altogether. No reason was given, and I'm guessing that's because it was a political reason. But you're not going to hear any of this from the likes of Governor Pritzker. All right, so what else do we have here? DHS press release. And I'll pull up the actual press release and read it directly from the DHS website. Update. DHS deploys special operations after multiple violent attacks on federal law enforcement by domestic terrorists in Chicago. Okay. So the woman here at the bottom of the screen. Don't know if I can enlarge her photo much more. Let me see here. My face is in the way. No, we're okay. This here is the woman. The activist. The leftist. All the above. And I'll go ahead and read through this article. 3 vehicles used as weapons against our brave law enforcement as they work without pay to make Americans safe again. So yes, keep in mind there is a government shutdown currently. Democrat caused. This morning, Border Patrol law enforcement officers were ambushed by domestic terrorists that rammed federal agents with their vehicles. The woman, Miramar Martinez, also known on social media as La Maggie, driving one of the vehicles, was armed with a semi-automatic weapon and has a history of doxing federal agents. She took defensive fire from CBP agents and has been discharged from the hospital and is currently in the custody of the FBI. The driver of another vehicle, Anthony Ian Santos Ruiz, involved in the ramming, has been apprehended by law enforcement. The scene became increasingly violent as more domestic terrorists gathered and began throwing smoke, gas, rocks, and bottles at DHS law enforcement. Another domestic terrorist was arrested for assaulting CBP at the scene. Following J.B. Pritzker's refusal to allow local police to help secure the scene, Secretary Noem has deployed special operations teams to restore law and order. So yes, J.B. Pritzker is playing right into the hands of the Secretary, Kristi Noem. He didn't want the feds involved, but now they're going to get even more involved. Maybe that's his long-term game plan. Give him more reasons to vilify them, I suppose. And yes, to be fair, I can't help but notice that DHS is somewhat broadly painting protesters/rioters as domestic terrorists. But if you're actively ambushing agents or attacking them after they have been ambushed, then I think the label of domestic terrorist is fairly applicable. As our ICE law enforcement was responding to the shooting, a domestic terrorist followed them and rammed their vehicle in an attempt to run them off the road. This individual has also been arrested and is in HSI custody, and I believe that's this guy here. An ICE vehicle popped a tire and was subsequently mobbed by domestic terrorists, forcing law enforcement to abandon the vehicle for their own safety. The vehicle was significantly damaged. Several CBP law enforcement officers were sent to the hospital with various injuries. And a statement from Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. You know what? I actually have the full statement from her pulled up later on in this thread. I'll cover that when I come to it, but I'll go ahead and read this quote from her. It's a short quote. "These attacks on our brave law enforcement officers must end. Secretary Noem has taken action to deploy additional resources to restore law and order. We will not allow domestic terrorists to attack our law enforcement. If you lay a hand on law enforcement, you will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." All right, what else? Here's an earlier DHS press release which shows examples of Miramar Martinez at Lamagui celebrating the doxing of ICE agents. So I'll go ahead and pull this one up. "Vehicles again used as weapon in attack against DHS law enforcement officers forced to fire weapon on armed woman in Chicago." And yes, this was published before the other statement was published. In fact, I might be able to skip some of this information. This morning, Border Patrol agents were conducting a routine patrol near the intersection of 39th Place and S. Kedzie Avenue when they were attacked and rammed by vehicles and boxed in by 10 cars. The officers exited their trapped vehicle when a suspect tried to run them over, forcing the officers to fire defensively. This is an evolving situation. FBI is on the scene. So I don't know if I would go as far as saying that 10 cars were attempting to box them in, or if the one woman ramming the DHS vehicle, the truck, basically herded that truck into the midst of 10 vehicles, in which case it was indirectly boxed in. It's just the nature of things that DHS is going to give their own agents the most beneficial benefit of the doubt possible. In other words, everything is a bit hyperbolic these days. I'm just trying to get to the underlying facts of the matter. Statement from Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. And this one I will skip. I will skip this quote because I have her X post pulled up further on down in my thread. "Just last week, an internal threat intelligence bulletin, I think that's supposed to say bulletin, was circulated about the armed woman for doxing law enforcement officers online." Here you see a couple of screenshots from her Facebook account, I believe, where she's saying, "They found him, LOL. They found him, LOL." She's sharing different posts intended to dox ICE agents. One of these posts she's reposting says, "This ICE wannabe agent is a YouTube blah 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 blah." There's photos of them, information about them. It's kind of blurred out here. Anyways, this woman clearly is not a fan of ICE. So it was an intentional ramming, an intentional ambush, not just some rando drunk driving and driving into DHS vehicles coincidentally. No. It was, in fact, an act of domestic terrorism of sorts, similar to the act of domestic terrorism or political assassination attempts, courtesy of the man in Texas just a couple of weeks ago who was aiming his sniper rifle at DHS agents and actually ended up killing the detainees instead. I covered that here on this channel. So I don't know if this woman was inspired by him. She did have a semi-automatic weapon with her, apparently. I don't know exactly what she was planning on doing with it, but I can't imagine she was planning on doing anything good with it, considering what she was doing with her SUV. Continuing on down through this thread, here's the statement from DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. "This morning, during routine patrolling in Broadview, in the same area of Chicago that law enforcement were assaulted yesterday, Our brave law enforcement officers were rammed by vehicles and boxed in by 10 cars. Agents were unable to move their vehicles and exited the car. One of the drivers who rammed the law enforcement vehicle was armed with a semi-automatic weapon. Law enforcement was forced to deploy their weapons and fire defensive shots at an armed U.S. citizen who drove herself to the hospital to get care for wounds. So despite all of her reckless driving and ramming, she was able to drive to the hospital. And yes, as is pointed out here, she was a U.S. citizen. So you have U.S. citizens doing the bidding of people who are here illegally. The only thing they have in common, though, is that they are criminals. Just saying. The armed woman was named in the CBP intelligence bulletin last week for doxing agents and posting online, "Hey to all my gang, let's go F those mother effers up. Don't let them take anyone." So yeah, she had violence on her schedule. Thankfully, no law enforcement officers were seriously injured in this attack, though some were apparently taken to the hospital or went to the hospital. Pritzker's Chicago Police Department is leaving the shooting scene and refuses to assist us in securing the area. There is a growing crowd, and we are deploying special operations to control the scene. This is an evolving situation, and we will give more information as soon as it becomes available. So she posted this before things had even come to their ultimate conclusion. Fortunately, it didn't last too much longer. You know, there have been a lot of protests in cities around the country as of late. Things going on in Portland right now. That has been a bit of a mess. I might cover all of that at some point, but right now, I'm just trying to make it through this. Several CBP officers were hospitalized, officials said. I have this article from The Hill linked here. I'm going to go ahead and read through this for any additional information on the situation. Armed woman shot after ramming law enforcement vehicle amid ICE protests. An armed woman was shot after driving her vehicle into federal agents in Broadview, Illinois on Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, said. According to a DHS statement obtained by NewsNation, the Hill's sister network, the woman, identified only as Miramar Martinez, rammed agents from Customs and Border Patrol, CBP. Martinez was armed with a semi-automatic weapon, authorities said, adding that she was shot by CBP agents and has been discharged from the hospital. DHS said that Martinez is in FBI custody and that another driver identified only as Anthony Ian Santos Ruiz was apprehended by law enforcement. DHS added that 2 more people were arrested, one for allegedly assaulting CBP at the scene and another for allegedly ramming an immigration and customs enforcement vehicle. Several CBP officers were hospitalized, officials said. In a Saturday post on social media platform X, DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said that Martinez was named in a CBP intelligence bulletin last week for doxing agents. The incident occurred amid protests regarding the presence of ICE agents in Broadview, located roughly 20 minutes from Chicago. DHS said in a release that 10 cars boxed in the CBP agents. Martinez then allegedly attempted to run over the agents, who then fired at the woman. ICE operates a facility in the village of about 8,000 residents. Last month, ICE launched Operation Midday Blitz in Chicago, boosting its enforcement presence in the 3rd largest city in the U.S. Earlier this month, DHS said that ICE and CBP officers have made more than 1,000 arrests during the operation. The raids, though, have sparked concern among immigrant communities, where Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has criticized the operation. Of course he has. Hundreds protested outside the ICE facility in Broadview on Friday, as DHS Secretary Kristi Noem visited the center. DHS said Friday that 13 people were arrested, while the Cook County Sheriff's Office told CNN that 5 others were arrested. On Saturday afternoon, after the vehicle ramming incident, Noem said on X she is deploying more special operations to control the scene. The FBI field office in Chicago said on the platform that the Bureau and its partners continue to aggressively pursue charges and investigate violence against officers, obstruction of justice, and destruction of federal property. Okay, so This is somewhat related. Guy Benson posted something which I thought was worth reading. Something about the recent violence coming from the left. So I'm going to go ahead and read through this post. I'll try not to get into the weeds of the other crimes and such he mentions, but here you have it. I'd like to ask my non-conservative followers to pay attention here for a moment. I don't need a response or a rebuttal or a whataboutism. Just read on and consider what I'm saying, please. We are only a few weeks removed from leading conservative figure being shot in the throat and killed by a leftist for enduring his speech at a public speaking event. Stunning, jarring numbers of leftist Americans justified and celebrated this assassination, aligning with multiple public polls showing that a sizable minority of leftists in this country think political violence can be acceptable. Of course, because they believe that words are violence. So if words are violence, then actual violence is justified in response to the violent words. That's their logic, or their illogic. Guy Benson continues, Today, just today, many conservatives are thinking about 1. A major leftist statewide candidate being exposed for sending text to a political opponent, a Republican, explicitly hoping for the death of another conservative political opponent, along with the deaths of that opponent's young children. He wrote down that the pain of those deaths might promote his own agenda, which would be worth it, in his estimation. This candidate is now condemning his current conservative opponent for noticing this information. Yeah, that's a wild one, having to do with Virginia, and I will probably be covering that at some point in a different show, in a different podcast. 2. A development in the case of a leftist would-be assassin of conservative Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, of course, who traveled across the country heavily armed with the stated intent of murdering up to 3 right-leaning justices because he was angry about their abortion jurisprudence. The leftist judge in the case rejected prosecutors' request for a multi-decade sentence, giving the defense team the very lenient sentence they'd sought. The leftist judge, in her reasoning, cited the criminal's trans identity as a factor and expressed happiness that the assassination plot and its aftermath helped the criminal's family therapy around the trans issue. And I talked about that just yesterday. 3. Yet another violent leftist attack, this time an apparent ambush against federal immigration officers. That's what this podcast is about. This did not take place in Dallas, where a leftist sniper very recently went on a deadly spree while trying to murder as many ICE officers as possible, to leave them with a sense of terror. That's what he called it. This one happened in Illinois, where the leftist governor just called these officers jackbooted thugs. Violent attacks on these federal agents, or as they've been called, thugs, fascist, Gestapo, per various leading leftist politicians, are up approximately 1,000% per DHS. 4. A prominent university being pressured into reversing its attempt to shut down a conservative event commemorating the 2nd anniversary of the October 7th terrorist attack massacre of Jews in Israel, because the school said they were worried about the security situation around the event. They were referring, of course, to the violent Islamic leftist coalition pro-Hamas mob, which has engaged in harassment, threats, violence, and murder ever since that mass slaughter. And yet, we see many of our leftist friends tweeting and posting about how their opponents are dangerous and authoritarian fascists. I ask you to try to contemplate, even for a quiet moment or two, how this might strike many of us. That's all for now. Thank you. So these things happen on all ends of the political spectrum, but right now, in Trump's America, an awful lot of anti-American behavior is coming from the left. Speaking of anti-American, if you're literally here illegally and therefore not a citizen, therefore not an American, then that seems kind of anti-American as a concept to me, especially if one entire political party is facilitating your entry into this country and expecting you to be able to live off the taxpayer dollars of the rest of us who are American citizens, so on and so forth. As for the Franklin Park incident, which J.B. Pritzker completely mischaracterized at the top of this thread, let's talk about it. And yes, I'm going to be getting into the second incident he mentioned from last month, where he claims that DHS put out propaganda about another ICE-related incident. So let's talk about it. My apologies if I'm mispronouncing this name. Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, in the country illegally, by the way, unlike the woman who rammed the DHS truck, resisted arrest by fleeing ICE officers in his car, dragged one of them for a significant distance through traffic, and ultimately got himself shot. Still, leftist officials like Pritzker continue to recklessly incentivize reckless behavior. By the way, if your argument of disproof is how the DHS said the officer was seriously injured, despite the officer on scene saying there were no major injuries, you're still losing the information war by wide margins. And I'd encourage you yourself to take the initiative to stop spinning everything and spreading propaganda. So what happened here was DHS put a statement about what had happened last month, saying that this officer, this agent, was seriously injured. Well, then body cam footage was released in which the officer himself, the agent himself, said that he didn't have any major injuries. He was taken to the hospital, checked out because, hello, he was drugged by a car through traffic. But yes, this is being used by the left, by the likes of Governor Pritzker, to spin the entire narrative into yet another way to villainize the agents over at ICE, DHS, so on and so forth. So let me pull up this statement from the Department of Homeland Security. DHS sets the record straight on gross smears against ICE officer who was seriously injured. There's that term there, seriously injured, in line of duty and shooting in Chicago during traffic stop. So here are the details according to the DHS. They note here at the top, ICE law enforcement is facing a 1,000% increase in assaults against them as they carry out enforcement operations. And this press release is dated September 19th. On September 12th, while carrying out an enforcement operation targeting a criminal illegal alien, the alien resisted arrest, attempted to flee the scene, and dragged a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer a significant distance. ICE officers conducted a vehicle stop to arrest Silverio Villegas Gonzalez. He refused to follow law enforcement officers' commands and drove his car at law enforcement officers. One of the ICE officers was hit by the car and dragged a significant distance. Fearing for his own life and broader public safety, the officer fired his weapon. The officer followed his training, used appropriate force, and properly enforced the law to protect the public and law enforcement. And this particular man did die. So despite his injuries, the officer and his partner immediately started administering emergency medical care to the illegal alien. The illegal alien was pronounced dead. The ICE officer sustained multiple injuries and has now been discharged from the hospital. So yes, a traffic stop turned into a hit and run, and because the officer was able to hold onto his gun while holding onto the car, he shot Gonzalez, who was attempting to flee the scene of what had become a crime scene. All of this is what J.B. Pritzker has summarized into propaganda by DHS. And listen, I get it. They're going to frame things in the way that's most beneficial to them in terms of optics, because that's how these things go. But the question isn't necessarily whether or not we think what the officer did was the most optimal thing to do in that moment. It's whether or not he was justified in doing what he did. And clearly, he was. And to say otherwise is to say that, hey, it's okay to resist arrest. It's okay to flee the scene in your car. It's okay to drag an officer through oncoming traffic and even get away. It's okay, first and foremost, to be here illegally for as many years as you'd like. That's the message that's being sent by Pritzker and his pals. And that's, again, anti-American, if you ask me. Very sad that anyone had to die from this, but encouraging more people to live lawlessly is not exactly going to save lives here. It's just not. The officer who fired his weapon has been a member of ICE law enforcement since 2021. Prior to that, he served in another federal law enforcement agency, worked as an EMT, and served in the military. So he's a veteran on top of everything else. This was his first time firing his weapon in a use of force incident. So to the people arguing that this was just some trigger-happy white guy just looking to kill somebody, I mean, 2021, plus his years of experience in other agencies, also in the military, he had ample opportunity to take someone out. But he waited until he was literally being drugged through the streets from a car driven by someone who was here illegally and was proceeding to commit more crimes. Both law enforcement officers involved in this incident were well-seasoned and trained professionals. His partner on the scene was one of the first responders to the New Year's Eve terrorist attack in New Orleans. Remember that? Another vehicle-related incident. I'm highlighting that word for a reason. Candace Owens. The officer who discharged his weapon feared for his life while he was being dragged a significant distance by a car. I believe this is another statement from Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. The officer who discharged his weapon feared for his life while he was being dragged a significant distance by a car. Our law enforcement officer followed his training, used appropriate force, and properly enforced the law to protect the public and law enforcement. The smears and misleading reporting in the days since the incident have been disgusting and contribute to our officers facing more resistance and assaults against them, said McLaughlin. Viral social media videos and activists encouraging illegal aliens to resist law enforcement not only undermine public safety, but also the safety of our officers and those illegal aliens being apprehended. The target of the enforcement operation was Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, a criminal alien who was here illegally and had a history of reckless driving. Unironically, he entered the country at an unknown date and time. I've heard that it was a number of years ago. So I don't know if they were just leaving that fact out or if they really didn't know at this point in time. Maybe considering how he's here legally, it's not necessarily known exactly when he got here. That's also a possibility. Here's some decent coverage of the Franklin Park incident, which is what I'm currently talking about, last month. But notice the pro-illegal anti-ICE talking heads who believe that it's more constitutional, as they say, to break the law than it is to enforce the law. I'm referring to some of the protesters in this particular news clip from CBS Evening News. I'll ignore their caption here. Just play the clip.
Surveillance video from this morning shows 2 ICE agents conducting a vehicle stop. The agents surround the silver car. The driver reverses the vehicle.
So there's an agent on the driver's side, agent on the passenger side. Driver begins to back up in its process of resisting arrest.
The officer on the passenger side can be seen pointing his weapon as the driver attempts to flee the scene. As the car drives away,
notice the feet of the driver's side agent disappear from the screen. There's no shadow, no nothing, as the car drives away.
Agent on the driver's side can no longer be...
See this guy's shadow? There's no second shadow. I know the video is kind of cut off because of the angle of recording, but the agent on the driver's side was being drugged alongside the car.
Seen in this video. In a different surveillance video, 2 gunshots can be heard as the vehicle drives away.
And that's when the shots were fired into the car and into the driver, who was here illegally just living his life.
In a statement, DHS said the driver, Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, struck one of the officers and dragged them as he drove away. That officer then fired his weapon, hitting Villegas Gonzalez. Social media video shows Villegas Gonzalez laying on the ground bleeding as agents appeared to provide immediate care.
We don't want our communities to be in this fear continuously.
The shooter.
And let me see here. I can't be sure, but I believe one of these agents is the one who fired the shots. So yes, in addition to waiting until such a time as this to fire shots. He then proceeded to try to save the life of the man he'd shot, going the extra mile there.
Agents appeared to provide immediate care.
We don't want our communities to be in this fear continuously.
The shooting sparked outrage among immigration advocates and local leaders.
It is wrong. It is unconstitutional.
So coming here illegally, constitutional according to you. Law enforcement doing their job, unconstitutional according to you.
And it is straight up racism.
A DHS spokesperson said the ICE agent followed his training, used appropriate force, and properly enforced the law to protect the public and law enforcement.
Racism, she says. That's why the word means so little these days.
The officer sustained multiple injuries and is now in stable condition. Villegas Gonzalez was pronounced dead at the hospital. According to ICE, he entered the U.S. illegally and had a history of traffic violations. ICE presence in the community created tension between protesters and agents outside of a migrant processing center near Chicago. Earlier today, we were with ICE agents as they attempted to carry out arrest. They were led by Marcus Charles, the head of the agency's deportation branch. How long can we expect the operation to last here in Chicago?
I'm not going to go into time. We're going to do what we need to do to get as many of these criminal illegal aliens off the streets and to protect the public.
Tensions are running high here over President Trump's escalating crackdown on illegal immigration. Internal data obtained by CBS News shows ICE this week surpassed 200,000 arrests since the president took office.
So I imagine he was a priority on the list of ICE precisely because of his traffic violations. And what did he do? Proceeded to commit more violations in traffic. Fair coverage from CBS Evening News there, though. Of course, Reuters felt the need to highlight the officer's injuries being described as nothing major, while downplaying the fact that he was dragged through traffic by an arrest-resisting, scene-fleeing illegal. Priorities these days. So yes, Reuters put out a different video showing some of the body cam footage.
That's you? Oh, okay.
Body cam footage has emerged showing the moments after a deadly shooting in Franklin Park, Illinois earlier this month, involving U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents, and it complicates the picture of the event presented by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. The shooting on September 12th of 38-year-old Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, a father of two, was the most violent case in a wave of aggressive ICE actions as part of the Trump administration's Operation Midway Blitz, a surge in immigration enforcement in the Chicago area that began earlier this month. Federal authorities said Villegas Gonzalez had, quote, refused to follow law enforcement commands and drove his car at law enforcement officers during a vehicle stop. They said an ICE agent was hit by the car and was dragged a significant distance.
This is the agent.
And was fearing for his own life. But in the body cam footage, the agent, in a bullet-resistant police vest and torn jeans, described his injuries as nothing major.
Yeah, you can see the torn jeans right there. Could have been a lot worse if he didn't have the bulletproof vest on when being dragged across the ground, potentially. I don't know how much it came into play. I'm just saying. You can see the hole in the jeans there, so yes. That's why this guy's looking down.
Major. An ambulance also arrived for the ICE agents, but neither was seen to receive any treatment in the body cam video.
From us right now? I think we're good, man. Okay. Shooken up. Yeah, absolutely.
The video Reuters obtained Tuesday was part of a public records request. It remains unclear whether the ICE agents will be subject to an internal review. Body cam footage captured one apparent policeman saying his department would not investigate a federal officer.
No, because it's a federal shooting. They're not going to investigate a federal officer. You have to wait till their bosses get here.
Both Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum have called for further investigations into the ICE agents' tactics. Federal authorities had said Villegas Gonzalez was in the U.S. illegally. He left his hometown of Irimbo in Mexico's Michoacan state 18 years ago for the U.S. On the day of his death, Villegas Gonzalez was dropping off his two children at a school and a daycare located blocks away from the incident.
See, they said 18 years ago, DHS said they didn't know at the time of the publication of that press release. But yeah, it's sad, regardless. Very sad. I'm just saying it's not exactly going to help anyone to continue encouraging more lawlessness. And I'm not saying all of these shootings which take place at the hands of ICE or other law enforcement agencies, considering a few years ago it was just police in general are bad, you know? Defund the police, that whole movement. Now it's specifically ICE, and again, I'm not saying that every shooting is justified, but we have to be reasonable and not just see everything through a predetermined lens like Pritzker does. Nothing major is a good thing. I mean, what if the officer had been drug up under the car or flung out into the street and run over by that semi, the one which the car ultimately collided with? I guess Pritzker and the left's talking point would go right out the window. Imagine if Pritzker's butt got dragged by a car. I think he'd find it more serious suddenly. Then again, maybe not, since he's apparently so desperate to defend illegals and criminals. So here's a clip from the Chicago Tribune. You saw some of this in that last clip from Reuters. This is body cam footage. I'll go ahead and play it. I'm trying to condense my commentary a little bit, wrap this show up as quickly as possible.
School District 83 and 84.
Yeah, EMS just loaded them up. Yeah, we'll follow them to the hospital. Yeah.
These are the two officers who attempted the traffic stop. And this one here is the one who was dragged.
Yeah. No, none of us were shot, just Ward got drugged a little bit.
Got drugged a little bit. None of us were shot, but he got drugged a little bit.
Just a left knee injury and some lacerations to his hands. Elbow.
Left knee injury and some lacerations, elbow injury, and then he says nothing major.
Nothing major.
But because he said that, and because DHS said seriously injured in their initial press release, that's being used as though it's the only relevant fact in this case. Look, I'm not supporting the conflation of so-called horrific injuries, but this notion that an officer is only justified in pulling the trigger if he first sustains horrific injuries is just incoherent nonsense. So I was reposting this post from True Crime Updates. They're obviously on the side of ICE, but they say down here, one ICE agent was hit and dragged, suffering horrific injuries. Put that in scare quotes. I'm not sure exactly who they're quoting there, who said horrific. He is now in stable condition. Another agent, fearing for his life, opened fire, killing Villegas Gonzalez. So wait a second. This is saying that the other agent is the one who pulled the trigger. Let me see if I can verify this really quick. Hopefully I wasn't mischaracterizing the shooting this entire show. Okay, back to this press release from DHS. It says, one of the ICE officers was hit by the car and dragged a significant distance. Fearing for his own life and broader public safety, the officer fired his weapon. The officer followed his training, used appropriate force, and properly enforced the law to protect the public and law enforcement. See, I'm reading all of this to mean that the officer who was being dragged was the one who pulled the trigger. This post here suggests that it was the other officer, which doesn't really change much in the grand scheme of things. It would mean that Officer 2 saw the danger that Officer 1 was in and acted on his behalf, but I don't think that this is accurate. Anyways, hopefully I've covered it accurately. I'll look into it after I wrap this show up, and because I'll have to trim a bunch of stuff out of this anyways, I'll make the appropriate edits. But I think I've been covering it accurately, and this post here is just wrong from True Crime Updates. There you see a photo of the car after it ran into the semi. It's clear that Pritzker would rather the agent be dead than the illegal who was dragging him while fleeing in a car. His entire argument here is that the shooting wasn't in any way justified simply because the agent wasn't severely injured or killed. Just think about that for a moment. Pritzker's argument is literally that, because he wasn't seriously injured, there's no possible justification for the shooting. Okay, you're supposed to wait until you die? And then, I guess, someone else shoots him on your behalf? It's just a weak sauce argument, but here you go. Another clip from Governor Pritzker from the end of last month. He's been touting this talking point repeatedly.
Moments ago, the Illinois National Guard received word that the Department of Homeland Security has sent a memo to the Department of War seeking the deployment of 100 military troops to Illinois, claiming a need for the protection of ICE personnel and facilities. What I have been warning of is now being realized.
Oh, aren't you a prophet?
One thing is clear, none of what Trump is doing is making Illinois safer.
None of it? What about you? Is what you're doing making Illinois safer? I don't think so.
2 weeks ago, a man was shot and killed by ICE in Franklin Park, Illinois. Shortly after, ICE issued a statement justifying the killing, saying the federal agent was seriously injured.
Okay, so, again, his logic or illogic is that because there was no serious injury, the shooting automatically was not justified. I guess that's his argument. It seems to be. But that's all he says, and then he just moves right on to his next talking point.
The Chicago Sun-Times has brought to light that the injuries were, in the agent's own words, nothing major. A man is dead. A community is shaken up.
Okay, then maybe you should stop encouraging people to resist arrest. Maybe you should stop encouraging people to track ICE agents. And yes, I have a clip for you on that. I'll share that after this one, but here's this one first. Keep in mind, J.B. Pritzker immediately shifted blame to Donald Trump, even after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The Gov is a one-dimensional partisan hack with blue for brains who regularly attacks the right, then complains about their rhetoric. So yeah, here was J.B. Pritzker shortly after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and he was already attempting to shift the blame to Donald Trump.
My sympathy to Charlie Kirk's family and to Charlie Kirk, who obviously has, become a target for somebody. I don't know whether it's political violence because I don't know who did it. I know they seem to have somebody in custody.
Okay, so once you found out how political it was, did you call out the politics behind the assassination? No, of course not. Just keep calling out Republicans.
But I will say that political violence, unfortunately, has been ratcheting up in this country. We saw the shootings, the killings in Minnesota. We've seen other political violence occur in other states. And I would just say it's got to stop. And I think there are people who are fomenting it in this country. I think the president's rhetoric often foments it. We've seen the January 6th rioters who clearly, have tripped a new era of political violence.
Oh, it's new era, is it? So, let me get this straight. The violence of the right and the supposed incitement of violence by Donald Trump himself, that's what has spurred on this new slew of violence coming from the left. So according to people, politicians like Pritzker, when there's violence coming from the right, Donald Trump is responsible. When there's violence coming from the left, Donald Trump is responsible. Like I said, one-dimensional partisan hack with blue for brains. But this was J.B. Pritzker just a month ago literally calling on the public to track ICE agents. And now he's defending a crazy activist lady known for trying to dox ICE agents after she repeatedly rammed a DHS vehicle with its blinkers on. So, taking this back to the start of the thread, ending on the topic we started by talking about, here he was, September 5, saying this. Sorry for the poor quality of audio.
Start with, we can't we, as I'm talking about the state or the city officials or law enforcement, we can't track what every one of the ICE officials and officers are doing on the ground. So we've asked the public. I've been very explicit about this. People in neighborhoods, they don't want these ICE officials, and they don't want troops on the ground. And so what we've asked is that people pull out their iPhone or their Android phone and film what they're seeing. Take a video of everything that you see so that we can know if, in fact, laws are being broken by these federal officials coming into our state.
So his interest is not whether or not people who are here illegally, or just criminals more generally, are in fact committing crimes. His interest is in whether or not federal authorities, ICE agents, are committing crimes. And he's now encouraging the public to track them. That seems dangerous, does it not? Especially considering what just happened a day ago. RNC Research posted this at the time and said, instead of helping ICE do their job and enforce our immigration laws, J.B. Pritzker wants residents to film them so he can track whatever they're doing. Imagine how much safer Chicago would be if this slob actually supported law enforcement. But he's not exactly going to change his tune anytime soon. He's not exactly able to read the room. But he's going to keep defending all the wrong people, and chaos is going to ensue, and then he's going to continue blaming those who are trying to bring the chaos to its conclusion. But there you have it. That's today's topic. I think I tackled that thoroughly enough. Again, I'd be happy to hear from you in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Keep in touch. Keep in tune. New content is coming soon. Peace.